نحمده ونصلي ونسلم على رسوله الكريم أما بعد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم فالسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. So in the last class we discussed the different types of or the different definitions of ilm, and we sort of dived into how ilm is defined, how have ulama defined it in the past, the parts of ilm that make up things. So all of those things, and then we finally came to the fifth definition of ilm, which is the rajih, which is the relied upon position for now. Okay, so today we will be continuing and building on that. So now we have defined what knowledge is. Now we'll be looking at types of knowledge and how do we go about that. So, as per usual, I'll read the text. Then we'll look at the text, we'll sort of explain the text, and then we'll come back and do the translation. All right, so Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. وهو ينقسم على قسمين أحدهما يقال له التصور وثانيهما وثانيهما يعبر عنه بالتصديق. أما التصور فهو الإدراك الخالي عن الحكم، والمراد بالحكم نسبة أمر إلى أمر آخر إيجابا أو سلبا. وإن شئت قلت إيقاعا أو انتزاعا، وقد يفسر الحكم بوقوع النسبة أو لا وقوعها، كما إذا تصورت زيدا وحده أو قائما وحده من دون أن تثبت القيام من دون أن تثبت القيام لزيد أو تسلبه عنه. أما التصديق فهو على قول الحكماء عبارة عن الحكم المقارن للتصورات، فالتصورات الثلاثة شرط لوجود التصديق، ومن ثم لا يوجد تصديق بلا تصور. والإمام الرازي يقول إنه عبارة عن مجموع الحكم وتصورات الأطراف، فإذا قلت زيد قائم وأزعنت بقيام زيد تحصل لك علوم ثلاثة، أحدها علم زيد، وثانيها إدراك معنى قائم، وثالثها علم المعنى الرابط الذي يعبر عنه بالفارسية بهست، وفي الإيجاب في الإيجاب، ونست في السلب، وها ونهي في الهندية. ويقال لهذا المعنى الرابط الحكم تارة، والنسبة الحكمية. So we could read this. ويقال لهذا المعنى الرابط الحكم تارة والنسبة الحكمية أخرى. فإذا أتقنت ما علمناك or sorry فإذا أتقنت ما علمناك فاعلم الحكماء يزعمون أن التصديق ليس إلا إدراك المعنى الرابطي، والإمام يزعم أن التصديق مجموع الإدراكات الثلاثة، أعني تصور المحكوم عليه وتصور المحكوم به وإدراك النسبة الحكمية المسمى بالحكم. So inshallah we'll try and do this till here. It's quite a bit, but hopefully we can get through this. All right. So in the last video, we basically talked about how knowledge is defined. And today we'll try and go a bit deeper into that and try and understand the different types of knowledge. Okay. How do you even divide knowledge? Well, we start by saying that knowledge can be divided into two types. Okay. Knowledge can be divided into two types. And so we can say knowledge can be divided into two types. The first of these types, the first of these types is called tasawwur. Okay. Or if you want to translate this in English, you could call this conceptualization, to conceptualize something. And we'll go into some depth about this in just a second, but just letting you know the terms for now. So the first is tasawwur, and the second type is tasdeeq. Tasdeeq. Okay, and this you would say assent. And of course, we'll detail this. Now, what is tasawwur? To keep tasawwur in a very simple sort of sense and to like remember what tasawwur is, remember that tasawwur is just the form of something in your mind. Okay? So for example, when I say horse, right? When I say horse, an image of a horse pops up in your head, a concept of a horse, a form of a horse pops up in your head. The thing that pops up in your head is what a tasawwur is. Okay? And we'll go into a more formal definition, but just to understand this first, if I say John, so a person named John pops up in your head. If I say girl, the concept of a girl pops up in your head. So this is what tasawwur is. Now, if we look at how it's formally defined, it is formally defined as it is cognition. It is thinking, and the type of thinking that does not have any hukum. Okay? And I'll explain what hukum means. So if I write this down, tasawwur is cognition slash you could think of it as thinking that does not have any hukum. That is the formal definition. Okay? That is the formal definition. Now, okay, we're fine with the formal definition, but what does hukum even mean? Hukum means a relationship between two things, and the relationship can be in the form of um in the form of it can be a positive relationship or a negative relationship. So for example, if we have two things, let's say horse or let's say John, okay? Or the book gives the example of Zaid, so let's just use Zaid. So we have Zaid as one tasawwur, or as one concept. We're not going to qualify it as tasawwur right now. And we have another concept of, let's say, okay. Now, whenever you say standing, the concept or the form of standing pops up in your head. If I say that Zaid and standing, do they have any relationship with each other? When I just say Zaid, does this have any relationship with anything else? It doesn't. When I say standing, does it standing have a relationship with anything else? It doesn't. So that is when you say that, okay, it doesn't have a relationship. Let's say it does have a relationship, then what would a relationship look like? If I say Zaid is standing, okay, now what you are doing is that this was one tasawwur and this was another tasawwur, and now you're creating a relationship between the two. Now this relationship is an affirmative relationship, that you're claiming this to be true. And this relationship can also be a negative relationship. So if you say Zaid is not standing, so what this is not, this word, these words is not is doing, it's creating a relationship between the two concepts of Zaid and the concept of standing. So the is not is negative. And again, the relationship can be positive, it can be affirmative, or it can be negative, it can be a negation of the of the relationship, but the relationship nevertheless exists. So that is the general idea. So whenever you think of a concept with no hukm on it, with no relationship with any other concept, then you would call that a tasawwur. So that is hukm. It is thinking that does not have a hukm, that does not have a relationship with another thing, in the form of it affirming something else or it negating something else. And there are many, many, many examples of tasawwur. Anything that you can imagine can be. For example, I'm writing on an iPad, so that if I think of an iPad, the iPad itself is a tasawwur. You're thinking it's a concept in your head, and it does not have any hukum. You're not negating anything about the iPad. You're not affirming anything about the iPad. For example, I say a book, right? Now the book is also a tasawwur because it's a concept, it's a form in your head, but you're not affirming anything about the book, nor are you negating anything about the book. If I say, for example, honesty. Now this is something that's abstract, but it's still a tasawwur, because you're not affirming anything about honesty, you're not negating anything about honesty. For if I say honesty is good, right? If I say this, now it's not a now this entire thing is not a tasawwur anymore, right? Because now you are affirming something about honesty, that it is good. All right. So, but if you look at just honesty still, if you just look at this honesty part, this is still a tasawwur. Okay. And if you just look at the good part, this is also a tasawwur. But this word is creating a relationship between the two, which is in this case an affirming relationship, a positive relationship between the two, and that is causing, and this relationship would be called a hukum. So I hope the word hukum is clear. So tasawwur is thinking that does not include any sort of hukum. If you think iPad, book, horse, animal, giraffe, zebra, if you think of mom, dad, child, if you think of teacher, school, and building, any all of these things, these are images, concepts, even abstract concepts like good, bad, um, like um, like 2, 5, numbers even like um love, hate, all of these are abstract concepts. But you're not affirming anything about them, you're not negating anything about them, you're not saying anything about them. These are just concepts in your head, and these concepts would be called tasawwur, and the plural of tasawwur is tasawwurat. Okay, so I'll just write the plural over here as well. So it would be called tasawwurat. Tasawwurat. Okay. So this is basically what tasawwur is. So I think this much explanation is enough for now. So that's the first type, conceptualization of something, tasawwur. The next type is uh, it would be tasdiq. Okay, tasdiq. Tasdiq is slightly more tricky. It's not hard. It's just you'll have to pay a little bit more attention. Tasdiq, like tasawwur, we said tasawwur is like one thing, right? Tasawwur is one thing. But tasdeeq is not just one thing. And there is a difference of opinion here as well that we'll get to. But just remember that tasdeeq is, I'll write this down first. Tasdeeq, it is made up of, okay, it is made up of tasawurat, okay, it made up of tasawurat, so more than one tasawwur, more than one concepts, and hukm, okay, it is made up of tasawurat and hukm. So it is basically a combination of different things. For example, we have a tasawwur, we have a tasawwur of Zaid. Okay, that's a tasawwur, that's a concept in your head. And then we have a concept of standing, that's a tasawwur as well, the form and concept of standing. And now you introduce a hukm between the two, you introduce a relationship between the two by saying Zaid is standing. Okay, Zaid is standing. Now there exists an affirmative relationship between the two tasawwurat. Now this entire thing would be called a tasdiq. This entire thing would be called a tasdiq. Does that make sense? It is made up of tasawwurat and hukm. So when these things combine and there is an affirmative or negative relationship between two things, and then they combine, so then it forms tasdiq. Okay, so let's take an I mean, we don't need to take an example over here. Um, because the understanding is already an example, so we'll just move a little bit forward and dive into it a little bit deeper. So there are some conditions for the tasdeeq to be formed, for the tasdeeq to actually exist. The first of those conditions is simple. The first of those conditions is um it's called mahkum alayh. Okay, but I'll try and keep this bit simple. It is, think of this as first tasawwur. Okay, and the second one would be the second tasawwur. So these are the conditions of tasdeeq. I'll write conditions over here. Conditions for a tasdeeq to exist. Then there is the second tasawwur. And then the third thing that's important is the relationship between the two. Relationship between the two. So, and this would be called hukm, right? So it is like we're saying, so okay, so tasawwur, the two tasawwurs are conditions, and then the hukm is also a condition. Okay. Now you don't need to remember this right now, but it's still useful. So over here, when you're saying Zaid is standing, you're affirming standing for Zaid, right? You're applying the hukum of standing on Zaid. Basically, you're saying that standing is about Zaid, right? So Zaid is standing, so you're telling something about Zaid. So the first tasawwur, if you think of it as Zaid, then Zaid is the mahkum alayh. Okay, I'll explain what this means. Zaid is the mahkum alayh. And these are just terms. You don't, if you can't understand them right now, it's not the end of the world, but bear with me for a second. And then the second tasawwur, which you are applying, is mahkum bihi. And if you have some experience with Nahu, then you'll understand these quite easily because of Musnad and Musnad ilayh. It's very similar to that. So mahkum alayh and mahkum bihi. So mahkum alayh is the one on which the hukum is applied. So Zaid is the one on about whom this thing is being affirmed or negated. And mahkum bihi is the thing that is being affirmed or negated. So standing. So let's take another example. Um, Let's take the example of honesty is good. Okay. Let me choose a different color. Okay. Honesty is good. Now, what are you affirming? You're affirming that honesty is good. You're saying that honesty is good. It's a positive relationship. Okay. What are you talking about right now? You're talking about honesty. So honesty is the mahkum alay because you're applying some sort of affirmation or uh, about honesty. So this is mahkum alay. Okay, mahkum alay. And good is the mahkum bihi because you this is what you're saying about it. This is what you're saying about it. And then the relationship between the two is obviously the hukum. Again, you don't need to remember this too much. This is going to be useful if you're reading on your own as well. These terms pop up a lot. Okay, so so far we know that there are conditions. There's the first tasawwur, there's the second tasawwur, and there is the hukum between the two tasawwurat. Now, if you say, if you say, um, let's continue with Zaid is standing. Okay, if you say, hold on, the wrong page. I want the other type. If you say, okay, so if you say Zaid is standing, Zaid is standing. The first tasawwur is about Zaid. So I'll write this down. First tasawwur, Zaid. Second tasawwur, standing. And then is there a hukum that exists here? Yes. And that hukum is an affirmative hukum. In Arabic, we call this an ijabi hukum. Okay, ijab. So ijab, if you want to go into the sarf of this, ijab is bab if'al from wajaba. Wajaba means to make something compulsory, to be compulsory, and then ijab is to make something compulsory or to make something necessary. So you're basically making standing necessary for Zaid in that particular instant. So that's why you would call it ijab. So it was actually, I'll just go into this little tangent. So it was actually like this. Okay, so ifjaban, but then the wow cannot be sucking after uh the hamza. So it turns into a ya to complement the kasra before it. So it turns into ijaban like this, like that. All right. So the hukum exists. It is ijabi. It is affirmative. Now what? Now there is a difference of opinion on what part of this is tasdeeq. Is the combination of all of these things tasdeeq? Is it just the hukum that makes it as a tasdeeq? Because remember, um tasawwur is thinking without hukum. So you would imagine that tasdeeq would be thinking with hukum. So that it kind of makes sense to say, okay, the hukum is probably the tasdeeq part in the entire sentence. So there is a difference of opinion here, two major opinions. The first, there's the one group that is the group of the philosophers, like a majority of the philosophers, and then there is the group of Imam al-Razi. Imam al-Razi. If you don't know Imam al-Razi, he was um, a very major scholar in Islamic history, and he has many works, including a very excellent tafsir, but a lot of his works are about philosophy and about logic and reasoning. And yeah, he's seen as a as an authority in the science as well. His full name is Imam Fakhruddin Al-Razi. So there are two opinions. There's one of the philosophers, and the other is of Imam Al-Razi. So let's look at Imam Al-Razi's opinion first. Imam Al-Razi says that the tasdeeq is a combination of the tasawwurat, and hukum. So he says that when you combine all of these things, then the outcome of combining forms a tasdeeq. So basically, all of these things are conditions. Even if one is not there, then you can't say that this is a tasdeeq. Okay. So when we say Zaid is standing, or in Arabic, we should move to Arabic as well now. Zaidun qa'imun. Okay. Zaidun qa'imun. Then basically, Zaidun, you're basically saying that you're affirming the qiyam, you're affirming standing with Zaid. So you get knowledge of three things. You get the knowledge of Zaid, the tasawwur of Zaid. You get the tasawwur of standing, the meaning of standing, and then the third thing you get is the ma'na al-rabit, the connecting meaning between the two, which would you would you could get from is. And in Farisi, for example, in Persian, you would call it hist or nist. Nist would be not, and hist would be is. And then in Urdu or Hindi, you would say hai or nahi. These are different ways of saying it. In English, you would say is or is not. So in Arabic, you don't really have one for is. It's just implied through mubtada and khabar. Uh, so this connecting meaning would be called hukm. And it's also called, another name for it is النس نسبة الحكمية. Okay. I mean, it's just a term as well, so it's also called النسبة الحكمية. So it's called a hukm and a nisbat al-hukmiyya as well. Okay, so Imam al-Razi says that um, it is a combination of all of these things. And the other group, the philosophers say that tasdeeq is only the hukm. Okay, tasdeeq is only the hukm. So there is a difference of opinion here. The philosopher says that the tasdeeq is only the hukm, and Imam Razi says it is a combination. So from this, you can sort of think that Imam Razi thinks that, like, to simplify this a little bit more, Imam Razi thinks that tasdeeq is a combination, a mixture of things, right? It's a mixture of things, and the philosophers think that um, that tasdeeq is a single thing. It's something that is simple and it is single. It's not made up of anything. And Imam Razi thinks, okay, there are conditions for it to be true. If any one of those constituent parts, anything of the parts that make up tasdeeq are not present, then tasdeeq wouldn't exist. So in that sense, Imam Razi thinks, and this is also a term, that tasdeeq is murakkab, it is made up of things. And philosophers think that it is basit, yani it's simple. And you'll come across this term as well when you're reading on your own. So murakkab and basit. So murakkab means made up of many things. It's a mixture. It is a combination of things. And basit means that it is simple. Uh it's not made up of many things. So that is the whole idea. So in short, tasawwur is, if we go back to our definition, tasawwur is thinking that does not have any hukum. It's just a concept. And then tasdeeq, assent, over here, we said that it is affirming something or negating something between two tasawwurat. So when you have two tasawwur, or tasawwurani, you could say, when you have two tasawwurs, you're basically affirming something about them or negating something about them. So that is what tasdeeq is in a very easy sense. But if you want to formalize the definition, then there are two ways of thinking of it. You could say that tasawwur is just the hukum, it's just the relationship that exists. It could be affirmative or or negative. And there's the other way that it is a combination of three things. The tasawwur of the first thing, which is the mahkum alayh, tasawwur of the second thing, which is the mahkum bihi, and then tasawwur of the hukum, the knowing of the hukum as well, the perception of the hukum that exists between the two. So when all of three of these combine, um then you get um tasdiq. So that's the whole idea. So I hope that makes sense. Um, so I'll just give you some examples as well of tasdiqat as well. So before we go back to the text and translate. Uh, all right, amthila, examples. So the first one could be the one that we've done so far. Zaidun qa'imun. Zaidun qa'imun. That Zaid is standing. Okay, that's one. The second one could be um kitabun. Yeah, or al-kitabu. Al-kitabu jadidun. Jadidun. That the book, the new is another tasawwur, and the is connecting the two together. The book is the mahkum alayh, new is the mahkum bihi, and is the hukum that connects the two together. Okay. Now let's look at a couple of negative ones. Um, we could have, so let's do Zaidun laysa biqa'imin first, so it's easier. Zaidun laysa biqa'imin. So Zaid is not standing. Okay, Zaid is not standing. Now Zaid is not standing is also again a tasdeeq, but over here the hukum is negative. Similarly, we can say al-kitabu laysa bijadidin, or yeah, let's just do al-kitabu laysa bijadidin. That the book is not new. The book is not new. So from this, we can sort of see that the is not part is the negative hukum. So I hope the idea is clear that these are tasdiqat and they're made up of tasawwurat. So Zaid is one tasawwur, qa'imun is another tasawwur, al-kitab is one tasawwur, jadid is another tasawwur, and so on. Okay, let's go back to the text and try and translate it. وهو ينقسم على قسمين, and it is distributed into two types. Yeah, huwa is referring to the ilm. So knowledge is distributed into two types. أحدهما, the first of those two types, يقال له تصور, is called tasawwur. وثانيهما, and the second of the two types, يعبر عنه بالتصديق, it can be denoted, or it can be it can be denoted with tasdiq. أما التصور, so as for tasawwur, فهو الإدراك الخالي عن الحكم. As for tasawwur, it is idrak, it is perception, al-khali, that is empty, عن الحكم, of any hukum. So it is perception that does not have any hukum. وَالْمُرَادُ بِالْحُكم, and what is meant by al-hukum, so they're about to explain what hukum means, is nisbatu amrin ila amrin akhar, that it is the relationship of one thing to another, one thing to another thing, ijaban aw salban. Now you see that word ijab popped up. Ijaban, it being affirmative, aw salban, it being negative. So remember these two terms, they are important. Ijaban aw salban. Salb means negative, ijab means positive. It's important, okay? It'll come up a lot of times. Wa in shi'ta, and if you wish, qulta, you can say iqa'an aw intiza'an. Iqa'an أو انتزاعا, that إيقاعا comes from وقع, and I would like the same way ijab was ivjaban with a wow sakin. Same way we have iqa'an as well with ivqa'an. Okay, ivqa'an. Then we can turn ivqa'an into iqa'an, because the wow, when it sort of complements the hamza before it, then it turns into that. Okay, so iqa'an. So if you wish, you may say iqa'an, affirming the relation, أو intiza'an, or removing the relation. وقد يفسر الحكم, and sometimes the hukm is explained بوقوع النسبة, by the existence of a relationship, أو لا وقوعها, or the non-existence of a relationship. So this is another way of defining hukm, that sometimes hukm is explained this way, that if a relationship exists or it doesn't exist. كما إذا تصورت زيدا. So like how you think, how you do a تصور of زيد وحده, only زيد alone, أو قائما وحده, or you think of standing as a concept alone, من دون أن آه، ت- ثبت يثبت, من دون أن hold on, yeah, من دون أن تثبت القيام, without you affirming the qiyam, the standing, li for zaid. So you're not affirming the standing for zaid, or you're not negating the standing for zaid. So you're just thinking about zaid, and you're just thinking about qa'iman, like standing, and you're not doing any affirmation or negation. You're just thinking about two things separately. So this would be tasawwur. أما التصديق, as for التصديق, فهو على قول الحكماء عبارة عن الحكم المقارن للتصورات. On according to the opinion of the philosophers, it is made up of hukum. It is made up of the hukum that accompanies the tasawwurat, that accompanies the tasawwurat. So it is the hukum that exists because of the tasawwurat, the hukum that exists in between the tasawwurat. فالتصورات الثلاثة شرط لوجود التصديق. So the tasawwurat الثلاثة, the three tasawwurat are conditions for the existence of tasdeeq, and that's what we discussed. ومن ثم, and the three tasawwurat are the tasawwur of mahkum alayh, mahkum bihi, and also um, the hukm that exists. ومن ثم, and for that reason, لا يوجد تصديق. Tasdeeq is not found bila tasawwur, without tasawwur. So tasdeeq must have tasawwur within it. والإمام الرازي, and Imam Razi يقول, he says, إنه عبارة عن مجموع الحكم وتصورات الأطراف, that it is made up of the combination of hukum and the tasawwurat al-atraf, the tasawwurat of the two sides. So this basically means mahkum alayhi, mahkum bihi. فإذا قلت, so now if you say زيد قائم, that Zaid is standing, وأزعنت بقيام زيد, and you believe that Zaid is standing, تحصل لك علوم ثلاثة. So you get the knowledge of three things. أحدها, the first knowledge that you get is the knowledge of Zaid himself. ثانيها, you get the perception of the meaning of قائم, the meaning of standing. So when you say Zaid is standing, first of all you get the meaning of Zaid, then you get the meaning of standing, and then ثالثها علم المعنى الرابط الذي, you get the meaning of the connection between the two, the connection between the two, which we also call حكم. يعبر عنه في الفارسية, and if you were saying that Zayd is standing in Farisi, it would be the word, this hast في الإيجاب in affirmation, ونيست في السلب in negation. Okay. وها ونهي في الهندية, and if you were speaking Hindi or Urdu, then it would be ha or nahi. But in Arabic we don't have that for mubtada, like I said. ويقال لهذا المعنى الرابط, and this connecting meaning is called al-hukm sometimes, and an-nisbatul hukmiyah sometimes. So you can call it hukm, and you can also call it nisbatul hukmiyah as well. فإذا أتقنت. So now if you understand ما علمناك, what we have taught you, فاعلم, then know that أن الحكماء, that the philosophers, يزعمون, they assert or they believe that تصديق ليس إلا إدراك معنى الرابطي, that tasdeeq is nothing except the perception of this ma'na rabiti. So they believe that tasdeeq is just a hukum. Well, Imam and Imam al-Razi yaz'umu, he believes that tasdeeq is majmu' al-idrakat thalasa, that it is the combination of the three idrakat, the three perceptions, the perception of the first tasawwur, the perception of the second tasawwur, and the perception of the hukum. أعني تصور المحكوم عليه. uh, so I mean تصور المحكوم عليه. So he's now explaining what the إدراكات الثلاثة are. So أعني تصور المحكوم عليه. So the first is the تصور of the محكوم عليه, which is also called حكم. This is basically what we talked about lesson, and passage also makes sense to you now. We'll go explanation of tawurat and tasdiqat. So yeah, I think that is enough for today. Inshallah, we will continue on with the next fasl tomorrow in the next class, that the two types of tasawwur. Okay. Inshallah, we will continue. وما توفيقي إلا بالله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.